This is the Galaxy S22 Ultra, and there are so many things about this phone that puts it apart from every other smartphone in this world. And in this video, I'm going to give you a small review and the pros and cons of the S22 Ultra. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the design of this phone. So Samsung has done a great job of designing this phone, and it looks really good in your hand with the matte back and Gorilla Glass Victus on both the back and the front. And this feels really premium in your hand, and the camera lenses are flush to the back instead of a bump we used to have before. And this is the first S-series smartphone to get the Galaxy Note design, which I personally like. But some people are gonna find this hard corners really hard to fit in their pockets. And one more drawback of this design is that dust can accumulate easily around the camera rings. And Samsung gives this phone pretty attractive colors, especially the burgundy and the green compared to last year. Now let's talk about the display of the S22 Ultra, and oh boy, this is the best display in its class. It has a 1440p AMOLED display, and it's slightly curved on the sides, which I do prefer. And this phone feels like you're holding a display in your hand thanks to the really slim bezels. And this display has a refresh rate of 120Hz, which is adaptive and can move from 1 to 120Hz in order to save battery. And this display has the best brightness in its class with 1750 nits. And the colors are really accurate, and I don't really have any complaints about this display. There is a fingerprint scanner below this display which works really fast and is more secure compared to most other phones thanks to the 3D technology that the S21 Ultra uses. And I really do love the positioning of the fingerprint scanner, which makes it really convenient for me to reach there. Now let's talk about what's powering the S22 Ultra. So the S22 Ultra comes with either the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 or the Exynos 2200. And unlike last year, most of the Galaxy S22 Ultra gets the Snapdragon chip, and the one which I have right now is the Snapdragon version. Now, one of the main benefits of having the Snapdragon version is that it is better optimized than the Exynos. That means you get better frame rate options in games, and the Snapdragon chip gives you an overall better experience. And this 8 Gen 1 tends to get warm really quickly once you push this phone to its limits, like playing games or using the camera. But it doesn't overheat in your hand, but some people might find it uncomfortable to hold in their hand. And also the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is a really power-hungry chip too. So even though the S22 Ultra has a 5000 mAh battery and a 4nm chip, the battery life is not as good as I expected it to. But don't get me wrong, this phone does last me a whole day with 5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time on average. But this is less compared to the competition and some other Samsung phones that I've seen. And even though the 8 Gen 1 is a really power-hungry chip, I'm happy that Samsung is giving Snapdragon in most of its S22 devices. In terms of software, the S22 Ultra runs on Android 12 on top of One UI 4.1 and gets all the bells and whistles of One UI like Samsung DeX, Knock Security, Good Lock, and many other features. So this phone will get 4 years of major Android update and 5 years of security update, which is never heard of in the Android world before. But there are some lags in the S22 Ultra when it comes to third-party apps like Twitter, where I see some stuttering when you're scrolling, and that destroys the smooth experience. Other than that, I'm really happy with this software, and One UI is one of the best Android skins out there. So in terms of RAM and storage options, the S22 Ultra has downgraded compared to last year. Now the S22 Ultra starts at 8 gigs of RAM and goes up to 12 gigs of RAM compared to 12 gigs of RAM last year and up to 16 gigs of RAM. So I would suggest you to get the 12 gig version because it will feel slightly faster. And in terms of storage options, the S22 Ultra starts at 128 gigabytes and goes up to 1 terabyte. And the S22 Ultra does not support SD card slot just like last year. And this shows that Samsung is following Apple's footsteps of removing the headphone jack to the SD card slot and finally the charger in the box. Speaking of charging, the S22 Ultra supports up to 45 watts of charging but doesn't get a charger in the box. So if you have any older Samsung 25 watt charger in your home, just use that. The 45 watt charging is not worth spending the extra money. And it's mainly because the 45 watt charger is not significantly faster than the 25 watt charger, And the S22 Ultra also supports wireless charging up to 15 watts and reverse wireless charging to charge other devices. So there is something really different on this S22 Ultra compared to the last year, and that is the speaker. So this speaker has really good quality audio, but the thing is that it doesn't feel as bassy or loud as last year or some of the other phones at this price point. Overall, I'm happy with the speaker quality of this phone, but when you compare this to some other phones at this price point like the iPhone, you feel that this is a little behind. And Samsung uses a new vibration motor on the S22 Ultra, which is not as strong as last time, but it feels more refined, which I do like. Now let's talk about the most interesting thing of the S22 Ultra, and that is the cameras. So the S22 Ultra has a 108 megapixel main camera, 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, 10 megapixel 3x telephoto camera, and a 10 megapixel 10x telephoto camera. And on paper, this camera system is pretty much the same as last year, but Samsung has done a lot of software optimization which makes this camera better quality than last year. The ultra-wide camera on this phone has autofocus, which helps this phone take really good macro shots at 12 megapixels. The main camera on this phone takes 12 megapixel shots as default, but you can turn on the 108 megapixel in the camera settings, and using this 108 megapixel mode you can get really good detailed shots at daylight situations. But it does take a dip in dynamic range when compared to the regular 12 megapixel photos. So I would suggest you to take 12 megapixel photos in low light situation, and if you get really good lighting situations, you can use the 108 megapixel and take in all the details as much as possible. And this main camera has a really big sensor which helps it perform really well in low light situations, and you can get really good details out of it using the night mode. And in terms of the zoom, this S22 Ultra has new telephoto cameras compared to last year. Samsung is using new Sony sensors which are actually smaller than last year, but Samsung has done some software magic to improve the quality, and the S22 Ultra has the best-in-class zoom. So take a look at this picture taken from the main camera and then zoomed into 3 times, then 10 times, 30 times, and I'm really impressed with the quality at 30 times. Unlike last year, Samsung has improved the color accuracy and the fringing that usually used to happen. I would say this 30x is really usable in some lighting situations, and when you go all the way to 100 times, the quality is mostly really bad. I don't use 100x at all. The only actual scenario which I use the 100x is for taking the shots of moon, which is really impressive, but I won't recommend you to use the 100x zoom. But I'm really impressed how they have improved the software manipulation after 10 times. The quality doesn't dip so badly even at 30 times digital zoom. And in terms of the video, there is a new feature called Auto FPS on the S22 Ultra, which reduces the frame rate of the video in order to get more brighter videos in really low light situations. But one caveat of this feature is that the camera becomes more sensitive to camera shakes. The selfie camera is a 40 megapixel sensor which also has autofocus, and that means you can get natural background blur in your selfies, and the quality of this camera is one of the best in its segment. One of the drawbacks that I want to point out about this camera system is the shutter lag, especially in low light situation. As the lighting situation goes really dark, the camera shutter takes almost a second to take picture, and that might end up being blurry, or you might miss the shot that you wanted to get. But this doesn't happen all the time, but I have seen it happening in certain situations, and that might ruin your camera experience. As I've said before, the S22 Ultra is the first S-series phone to get the boxy Note design, which the Note fans like me really love. And also this is the first S-series phone to get integrated S Pen support. So that means the S22 Ultra gets all the S Pen features of the Note 20 Ultra, like the air commands with gestures, and Samsung has improved the latency of the S Pen down to 2.8 milliseconds, which means the writing experience on the S22 Ultra is just like writing on a piece of paper. And using this pen, you can take down notes and use it as a remote for your camera shutter and many other features. So should you buy the S22 Ultra? So it has been almost 6 months since the S22 Ultra has been launched, and the prices has gone down significantly by now, and if you can wait for a few more months, the prices will even go down. And by the launch of the iPhone 14 series, this phone will be much more cheaper and a better deal, and I have no issues recommending this phone to most people. So that's it for this review, and hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.